today we're talking about privacy and data collection, and specifically the news that came out from Infura and MetaMask, who are owned by Consensus, and the update that they made to their privacy policy. What does this mean? What happened? What data are they collecting on you? How do they collect this data? And is there anything you can do about it? If you're like me, you probably use MetaMask, and you might not want them to collect your data because you don't know what they're going to do with it. Now, we'll talk about what MetaMask and Consensus has said that they are doing with this data. And right now, they're not talking about doing this in any Web2 or any nefarious way of selling our data. However, you need to be informed, and this is a very important issue. A big part of why we are building Web3 is for decentralization and putting ownership back in the hands of users and not giving our data to companies that they can then just go sell. So you need to be up to date on this issue, and you've got to listen to this show today. We have on with us Arthur Sabintsev. Arthur Sabintsev is the COO at Pocket Network and just a giga brain in the space of product development and engineering. He spent a decade scaling mobile consumer apps. He worked at Capital One and was the lead executive on their mobile payment and mobile platform system. He worked at the Washington Post, where he was the lead mobile architect for their SaaS platform, which powers 60 plus news publishers around the world: Chicago Tribune, Boston Globe, LA Times, and many more. He's advised on many projects in the blockchain space, including POAP and Phoenix. And also in a past life, he was a physicist. So he's got an incredible brain that he's bringing to the show. And we're going to do our best today to give this information to you in a digestible way, trying to not get too technical, only explain what you need to know so that, again, you can be safe with your data and you can feel secure, because the last thing you want is somebody selling you your data without you knowing and monetizing you as the product. That's not the point of Web3. And that's why we're here today. Before we get into today's show, if you can, just do me a favor, take a quick minute. And if you're on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, would greatly appreciate a follow and a review. These are the things that help the Web3 Academy show gain more traction and more followers. We've had an incredible year of growth, and we just want to get Web3 information into the hands of the masses. And that's a simple way, free way, no cost way that you can help us out. Before we get into the show, though, let's just take a minute to hear from our sponsors.
The future of social media is here, and that future lives in Web3 on top of Lens Protocol. Web2 social platforms are broken and ripe for disruption. You see, the epicenter of social media is the creators, and yet they are the most neglected. Web2 platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram are all essentially robbing creators of their worth. Creators are a new type of entrepreneur, forming new types of businesses. Yet with Web2 platforms, creators don't own their content or their profiles, and that's their product and business. Instead, they are tied to the platforms they choose to create on. Well, just like how crypto is freeing us from banks, Web3 is freeing us from these centralized platforms. On Lens Protocol, creators own their content, own their profile, and even their social graph and followers in the form of NFTs. This allows you to move freely from one social application to another with your content, profile, and followers moving along with you. Lens Protocol enables self-sovereignty for your social graph and interoperability across the internet. At Web3 Academy, we believe this is the future of social, and that's why we partner with Lens to ensure that the path of social media is heading in the right direction. Visit lens.xyz to learn more today.
Unlock Protocol is the NFT membership protocol for Web3. Content subscriptions, community access, event tickets are all forms of memberships, one of the most common business models for creators and entrepreneurs today. Building an NFT membership opens many new possibilities for your members. Everything from tailored multi-platform experiences to the ability to sell an unfinished subscription on secondary markets. These are things just not possible in Web 2. However, in order for this business model to work, creators need NFTs which are time-bound or have built-in recurring payments. Unlock Protocol does this for your NFTs. Better yet, with a few simple steps, you can create your own NFT contract without code. What WordPress has done for websites, Unlock Protocol is doing for membership NFTs. If you're an NFT creator, you can't rely on royalties as they are likely going to zero. You need recurring revenue. You need Unlock. At Web3 Academy, we believe NFT memberships are the future of business and community. And that's why we decided to build on Unlock. Learn more at unlock-protocol.com. Today, we are talking about a very important topic, which has been hot news the past few weeks. And that is MetaMask collecting your data? What's going on in this data collection, this privacy policy change that came out of Infura, which is owned by Consensus, which is also owns MetaMask? We're going to break this all down for you, make sure you understand what is going on. And here to talk about it is Arthur, the Chief Operating Officer at Pocket Network. Arthur, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Appreciate the offer to come and speak about this pretty relevant and hot topic.
Very relevant. I mainly appreciate your eagerness to talk about this on such a short notice. We connected with each other just a few days ago, and here we are recording. Things happen fast in Web3, and you were ready to respond. So kudos to you.
Yeah, well, it's been like an ongoing issue since the information dropped Wednesday or Thursday. I mean, it was Thanksgiving here in the US, so I had to.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right, so I had to pull my wife aside. I need to work now, and she understands, right? So she got it. So we got a bunch of people, and yeah.
Shout out to your wife.
Yeah, she's the best.
For understanding. That's amazing. Okay, so let's start by setting the context. So as you said, Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving last week. Here's what happened. So Consensus, their API tool, Infura, said that it will begin collecting users' IP and ETH addresses. And to be clear, Consensus also owns MetaMask. Now, about 350,000 developers use Infura, including Argon, Gnosis, Open Zeppelin, some of the largest players in the space. And obviously MetaMask uses Infura. So when moving forward with this new privacy policy change, when you use Infura as your remote procedure call provider, your RPC provider, and we'll break that down, what that definition is in a second, we'll get that. When you use that in MetaMask, it will collect your IP address and your Ethereum wallet address whenever you make a transaction. Arthur,
Yes.
What else do you have to add to the sort
Almost.
of the context?
So it's Infura collecting it, not MetaMask.
Okay.
So a little bit of a difference. So Consensus is this company that spun out of, I think, the original Ethereum group, right? There was a core set of developers. Joe Lubin was one of those developers. He started Consensus, SYS, how that ends. And it has a bunch of products under it. Two of them happen to be Infura, which is a blockchain access provider or an RPC provider, and MetaMask, which is a front-end utility that allows you to interact with what we call Web3, the various EVM blockchains. So Ethereum virtual machine blockchains. So the blockchains that are built on to work as layer 2s on Ethereum or work as side chains or just work or Ethereum directly. So it is Infura, the blockchain access provider, that is collecting this data.
Right. Okay. And let's just talk about how Infura works and how remote procedure call RPCs work, because I think that sort of lays the foundation for better understanding this issue.
Yeah, I never really had a great, so I like to do things by analogy. I don't really have the best analogies for this one, because the way to think about it, or the way I like to think about it, is you come in and you're just making a request. You're sending a request saying, hey, I'm on Ethereum. I'm trying to read data from the Ethereum blockchain at the current height. And then you tell that to the RPC provider, or the application you're interacting with tells that to the RPC provider. And the RPC takes that call and then sends it to the appropriate data node, which I'll describe in a moment. So I think I'm trying to think about it right now, because funny enough, as long as I've been in this industry, no one's really ever asked me to explain it, which is crazy. So, and I've done enough of these interviews that I should have come up at some point. But basically, like, you say you want to go to Starbucks, which is like, you say you want to go to Ethereum, you're going to go to Ethereum, but you're not. And then you say, I want to get a coffee at Starbucks, or I want to sit with my friend at Starbucks. So it's like, do you want to do a swap request? Do you want to read data from the current block height? Or do you want to go to the restroom? I don't know, whatever the equivalent of going to the restroom would be. Send something to, you want to send a transaction into the Ether would be a bad example, but I guess send transaction to 0x0000, like to burn something.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of how to think about this. You're going to somewhere and you have different choices. An RPC provider effectively is like the Starbucks that sends your data to the different things that you can do at Starbucks. So like fetching requests, get requests, read requests, all different types of requests, transactions of all
Right.
sorts.
So these RPC providers sit in between the
Yes.
blockchain and the apps.
Yes. So the way the apps interact with a blockchain is through an RPC provider. So like in the Web 2 world, usually the company that you work for or the tool that you're building, you own the server, it's private. You own the database, it's private. And you have your app, which is yours, right? So if any company I've ever worked with, I'm accessing data from my own private database. However, in the blockchain industry, it's a public database, a public ledger. And because it's public, everyone kind of can own it or interact with it or operate it. Not own it, but operate or interact with it is, I guess, the way to think about it. And because everyone can do it and no one truly owns it, the question is, how do you set up a connection to it? So rather than you set up a client server connection directly from the app that you own to the database that you're trying to interact with, you go through this middle layer, which then routes the request for you on your behalf, because this middle layer usually stands up those nodes for you. If you want to be truly self-sovereign and do it yourself, you could stand up your own data node, your full node to access it. So you could effectively create your own endpoint and say, hey, I am going from my app, which I built like Arthur's app, to Arthur's Ethereum full node, and you can just interact that way. But it's very expensive to do so. So most people, and it requires wildly different skill sets to set up a node versus building an app, even though it's not software engineering or IT or whatever you want to call it. It's like that whole mixture of that whole field. Yeah, someone's going to kill me. I'm an engineer, everyone, by the way. I've done this for decades. It's hard to kind of quantify where DevOps fits in this cycle. But basically, a DevOps individual sets up a node, a software engineer builds an app, the software engineer sends a request to the dev node, and then boom. So either the question in this case is most people don't stand up their own nodes.
Right. Of course not. We're not going to, right? That's not the solution for us onboarding 1 billion people to Web3. And let's be clear, one of the reasons why this attracted so much attention is because, and we'll get into this deeper in a second, but privacy and data collection have become a massive issue of the way that we have created these Web2 monolithic companies that own so much of our data and use it. So we'll talk about that in a second. But so right now, basically what this means is I use MetaMask. Whenever I use MetaMask, I am currently in the default setup using the Infura gateway to connect with the Ethereum blockchain. And as a result of that, now Infura will know my IP address, it'll collect my data. And let's just be clear, what data is it collecting?
I think they said it's collecting so it's geolocation and your wallet, right? So your IP address tells you where you are in the world. And depending on if it's a static or dynamic IP, you could effectively drill down to the street that you're on, right? It could drill down. It's definitely your country, potentially your city, potentially like the portion of the city or town that you live in. It can go really, really deep. And then the wallet address is what do you own? So basically, without asking you for your name, it effectively says this person lives on Main Street or close to it in the town of, I don't know, Townsville. My kids are watching Powerpuff Girls a lot lately, so Townsville comes to mind. So yeah, so you live on Main Street in Townsville in the country of the United States of America, right? So they get, and they're like, you use this address.
Right.
Great. So that information is there.
Which can lead to a lot of it can lead to them to create a profile on you of who you are, right? They can probably profile you, create a profile of how much money they think you make, what your hobbies are, what your interests are, right? Because of that, they get a little bit of data on you and they can take it.
Or worse, right? So, this information, and again, I'm going to say this right now. We are friends with the people, the company I work for, we are friends with the people at Infura, right?
Yeah.
We are cooperative competitors, I guess is how to think about it.
Yes.
I don't know why they're doing it. Joe Lubin, the CEO of that company, said they're not going to be reselling any of this data. Right. I don't know what it's needed for, but they're doing it. So maybe their lawyers are trying to figure that out. Like I know right now we're going through our terms of service and privacy policy to update it to make sure it aligns with what we actually do at Pocket Network, where I work.
Yeah.
Because, lawyers sometimes want to be all encompassing and say, just in case, But given the
Right.
data that's going on, I was already actively over the last 2 weeks updating this information. Now we're doing it a little more, stringent to make sure we actually say what we're doing, because we
Right.
don't do much on our end where I work.
Right. Right. So essentially, and we're jumping ahead a little bit, but just to tease
Sure.
this, what Pocket Network provides is one of the things you guys provide is the same gateway that Infura provides, and you do it without collecting this data. So I'm just going to tease that. And we're going to talk about
Sure.
how you do
Yeah.
it in a second.
I will try to not go into the exciting
I like
part.
that you're excited. Okay.
Of
So
course.
before we get there, just a couple other definitions I want to get through. Endpoints is a word that keeps coming up. I want to make sure people understand what endpoints are. Logging practices and nodes. Let's just briefly explain what nodes
Sure.
are so everyone understands
I
those.
will start with nodes. So nodes. So how do you access a blockchain? Like, how do you access any block, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or what do you do? You stand up a node. It's pretty much a machine that keeps up to date with the current state of the network it's trying to connect to. So when you connect to the Ethereum blockchain or the Bitcoin blockchain or what have you, you effectively download all the data from other nodes, other peers in the network that say we are currently at this point in the current block height. This is how many blocks we've processed. The database is this high. The ledger is this high, is full of this much data. So a data node effectively is something that keeps a copy of the blockchain all over the world, right? So the reason you can't kill Web3 is because as long as one blockchain is up and running on this network, or this is connected to this, global network, the network will continue to exist. So a node is just a way to access this network, and it's can be and cannot be trivial to stand up depending on the blockchain you're working with, for reasons I don't want to get into right now.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So a node is a computer that somebody created, whether it be an enterprise or whether it be a person, probably a more highly technical person. And as you said, depending upon the blockchain, there's various difficulties of nodes. It's basically, though, it's a machine, a computer that somebody has at home that they are using to access blockchain and to be part of the creation of this decentralized network.
Yeah, it's part of the infrastructure, right? It just stands up. It's a scaffolding that kind of stands up the entire network. Each time you add a node, it's just centralizing it a bit more. Yeah. So logging practices. It's just the harvesting. Well, harvesting is a bad word, but like I can't think of another one. It's just collection or harvesting of information. So anytime you do anything on the internet, information is copied by whatever provider you're using. Like, even if you're using the most privacy preserving tool on the internet, they still get that information temporarily, and then they either eject it or store it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to go into what Pocket does yet, because we'll get to that later. But logging practices is effectively just storing data from user interactions or non-interactions, like just loading a web page. It'll automatically log, like, you loaded this web page using this browser, use on this device, on this day, at this time, and then whatever other things they can glean about you based on what the browser shares.
Which is exactly the problem that we're in, right?
Yeah.
And that's a Web 2 problem, right? Is that we have these logging practices that we have accepted, whether we whether we consciously accepted them or whether we just didn't have a choice because these tech companies built their business models on this. They are logging all of this data from us, and currently they're using it to sell us ads, and that's their form of monetization, which is, I think most people would agree, is not a great thing for humanity and for our privacy and our security of our personal identity, and really things that we would never think that somebody else should be able to know and should be able to monetize about us. So let's just talk a little bit more about that problem, because I just want to, in prepping for this episode, I took a look back at what does Google collect about us, and it is shocking to look at. It's, if you want to feel a little bit sick to your stomach. And I say this, I use Gmail, I use many Google products, so I am only allowing them to do this to me. But Google has our location. They have everything we've ever searched and deleted on Google, obviously. So even if you delete something from your search history, they still know that you searched that. They have a full ad profile on us. They have, based on basically the information they have our location, our gender, our age, our hobbies, our career, our interests, our relationship status. Possibly they know our weight, our height, our income, what apps we use, et cetera, right? It's scary.
Yes. It is, but I saw this tweet and I wish I had saved it. But the fact that we gave them all this data and then they were able to target us helped them build better products.
Right. Yes.
And that's why we continue to do this. All right. And it sucks.
Okay. Before we jump into Pocket Network, let's just talk about, and I think the way let's talk about decentralized apps, decentralized data as a whole. And I think where I want to lead into this is actually by understanding your decision to join Pocket Network, I think is kind of an interesting lead in, because you worked at, you were the accountable executive at Capital One for their mobile payments and mobile platform. You were the chief mobile architect for the Washington Post's SaaS platform. So you've managed large teams and large projects at some of the biggest companies in the world. You probably could have gone and worked anywhere, and you chose Pocket Network. And so why did you choose Web3, and then maybe why Pocket Network?
Requires a little bit of history about myself, if you don't mind me.
No problem. Yeah, please.
I am someone that always thinks about the future as a child as well. And I've gotten very lucky to using whatever methods that have existed to pay attention to what's going on in the world. So I began coding one summer in the late 90s. I'm 36 right now. So I was like 11, 12, 13 when I started coding. When I went to college, Firefox and extending Firefox, which is a browser that isn't isn't big anymore, was a big thing. And I started doing open source development, and I wrote a bunch of Firefox extensions that became very popular. Like, we're talking millions of users. And then from there, based on my developer profile on that website, I landed a job as a mobile engineer in 2011, which was like 3 years after the App Store came out. But apps weren't really, they're becoming a thing, but they weren't that big yet. And so not only did I catch the Firefox, like the browser extensibility, open source wave, I caught the mobile wave. So I was able to capture the user experience waves, or as like the human adoption waves of technology.
Yeah.
From the early 2000s. And sometime in the mid-decade, 2015, 2016, I happened to do a lot of personal brand building in the iOS space, which is what I primarily did for a decade. And I met this guy online who asked me a bunch of questions, wanted to pivot into software engineering. There's a point to this story. He sends me his resume. I kind of help him get his first job. And then he pivots to Web3 and asked me to actually consult for him on a gig, on a mobile related gig. It happens to be a company called Pocket Network, which wanted to put blockchain access in everyone's pocket, which is where the name kind of came from, or related to that. And next thing you know, we keep talking for the last few years, and then things come to a head about a year ago, and he asked me to join and kind of help lead the team. And I couldn't say no, because that entire time I had, once I had kind of gotten a taste of what this space was like, I was kind of thinking about it on the side. And then obviously during the COVID lockdowns and the early, 2021, with the Bitcoin hitting like 20K or 60, 40, whatever it is, whenever it like shot to the moon and Ethereum followed suit and NFTs were becoming a thing. Like, you can't ignore that, especially if you're you listen to tech podcasts all day. And then I realized that's all I started thinking about. That's it. It's just like this space was so like, holy shit moments. It felt like
it's okay. You can swear.
Oh yeah. Fantastic. It felt like we were reliving I'm going to really date myself, like the Angel Fire, Tripod, Fortune City, web days, and then like the MySpace, Friendster, social media days, all at the same time. Like, we were speed running like the entire adoption curve starting that year. And knowing that I love working in user experiences, and I saw how non-mature this industry was. And I'm like, okay, this is still the beginning. And then obviously I had this connection with Mike, the CEO, and he reached out to me when I was literally starting to look. It was really like coincidental that happened. And then I said, yeah, I'll take the job. And it's been a really crazy year, and no regrets. I definitely had a really cushy job in the past. Now I work like 18 hours a day.
Very, very different.
Yeah. But I love it. It's exciting. I feel like I'm actually doing something. And this isn't even like user experience. This is middleware. Like, middleware is, the way we explain it is, middleware is like during the gold rush, who is it that made money? Is it not the people mining for gold? It's the people selling picks and shovels and cigarettes and alcohol. Right. We are those drug dealers. We are those like we give you axes and booze. You go have fun. That's what we do. I don't want that soundbite out there. But we at Pocket Network, we provide you with the tools to build the products that you want.
Right, which is
blockchains.
which is where we're at right now, because the products, we're building the products, and like, great, the NFT boom of 2021. And wow, all of a sudden, JPEGs are worth, six figures, $1 million, and are still selling at that rate. But there's a lot more, and we talk about this all the time on the show. There is so much more business application to come. There is so much more usability and use cases to come for blockchain. But right now we are focused on this middleware layer, the infrastructure layer. And one thing that we come back to a lot is data and privacy, because it's such a problem in Web 2. So obviously with Infura making this announcement, everybody goes nuts and is like, oh my gosh, this isn't what we're trying to build. So let's talk now about what Pocket Network is building and how you guys are doing it different than the way Infura is doing it. And just break that down for us so we can all understand that you don't actually have to do it the Infura way.
Yeah. So Pocket Network effectively has 3 entities under it, which I know we'll discuss later on. But basically, we are a corporate company based out of the US. We have a foundation based out of the Cayman Islands, and we have a DAO, or decentralized autonomous organization, that effectively helps vote on making changes to our protocol. So we are a L1. We are like, Bitcoin is an L1 blockchain. Lightning is an L2 solution on top of it. Ethereum is an L1 blockchain. Optimism and Arbitrum are L2 solutions built on top of it. Pocket is an L1 blockchain. It is a proof of stake blockchain currently written on top of Tendermint, or forked from Tendermint. And we are now working on our own homegrown version of our blockchain, which will get released later in the next year. What we do is we relay requests from using our blockchain to other blockchains, and then relay it back. The reason we do it this way is using blockchain technology can decentralize blockchain access. You can decentralize the entire connection. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to try to distill this. It's going to take a few minutes.
It's fine.
So basically, Pocket Network Inc., the company, has a gateway. We have an API gateway, like Infura has a gateway. Right. At the moment, that gateway is centralized by us. However, with the release of our future blockchain in the end of next year, or close to the end of next year, we will be able to decentralize that layer. Below, when you get into our gateway, what we do is we take your traffic, like the Starbucks example, and we send it to a node that is not owned or operated by us. So like our competitors or our friends in the same industry, like QuickNode, Infura, Alchemy, Moralis, Anchor, and the rest, Anchor not so much, but the others, they own all the nodes. We own a small portion of the nodes, but we don't own all the nodes. We contribute to our network, but we don't overwhelm the entire network of nodes. So what we do is, let's say you want to read data from Ethereum. You use Pocket's RPC endpoint, and I'll define endpoint in a moment. I realized we didn't, but use Pocket's RPC endpoint, and you send your request to read some type of data from Ethereum, and our gateway will randomly or pseudo-randomly select a node somewhere that is close to you in the world for latency perspectives, to make it like a fast connection, and get you that data back. And then the reason that node even exists is we've incentivized node runners, infrastructure providers, DevOps engineers to stand up nodes, because they get a token for being randomly selected to process your request. And this token is used to stake new nodes, and it's also used to pay for the throughput, or pay to access the blockchain. So we stake tokens to stand up a node, like you would stake Ethereum tokens, or what people call Ethereum 2 tokens, and then you stake tokens to actually define your bandwidth or your throughput. So like a certain amount of tokens will allow you to have 1 million requests per day.
Right.
And so tokens have this dual purpose incentive of paying for access, providing reliable infrastructure for yield. And that's kind of how our system works. And we all are able to do this because we decentralize through our own blockchain. So basically you have your app sends stuff to our gateway. Our gateway interacts with our blockchain, our L1 blockchain, Pocket the blockchain, and it chooses a random node on that blockchain to relay the request and then sends it back.
Right. And just to ask the obvious question of you guys being your own blockchain, the purpose of Pocket's blockchain is to be this RPC provider. Is that correct?
The purpose, there's more.
Is there other objectives as well?
So the reason I don't like to call the folks that, the companies I mentioned are competitors, but are friends, is because eventually we believe that all will be our customers. Here's why. We believe that we are another base layer protocol. So TCP/IP, the internet protocols, the ones that define HTTP and IMAP and SMTP and all of the web and internet email protocols, the ones that say allow one browser and another browser to load the same website and for the website to render properly. We believe we are on that level of being a base layer protocol. We believe that all of these centralized providers will eventually want to offload some or all of their traffic to our decentralized network of providers. Because that's the goal here. The goal here is to give you fast, reliable, and affordable access to blockchain data without actually having to create an entire Web2 company around it. So even though right now Pocket Network Inc., the US company, is a Web2 style company, we don't do the same Web2 practices because at some point later next year is our goal, we are going to have other gateways that will be connecting to Pocket, the blockchain, the Pocket Protocol blockchain, Pocket Protocol, without having to go through us. Right now, they only go through us because there's a limitation in how Tendermint works and how many apps can actually connect. It's just something we can't get around. But our goal is to have other providers in our ecosystem. Will we be one of the providers, bigger providers? Potentially, because we're here first and we built the thing. But our goal is to not be the only one. So it's like decentralizing ourselves out of a job to some degree. Not completely.
Which maybe is it fits really well with the ethos of Web3.
It does.
That's what we need. We need to be open source. We need to all believe that, WAGMI, we're all going to make it. We support each other. It's not building walled gardens. It's, we're going to do this together.
But at the same time, you still need user experiences, right? We have an SDK. Our SDK can access the blockchain without a front end, but it won't work in the way it needs to work because you can't perform certain actions yet without going through our gateway. But in the future, if you are so adamant on doing things yourself, like standing up your own node, standing up your own access points, you could literally direct connect to the blockchain with our SDK without using a gateway. A gateway is just a front end, just like Uniswap is a front end for swapping tokens.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And gateways will always exist, right?
Yeah.
Just like banks will always exist, custodians will always exist for your tokens, because not everyone has the ability or wants to even learn or even has the time to manage their own coins or whatever it is that they're trying to manage. It's just not feasible to onboard people by telling them, hey, you need to go grow your own food and kill your own cows and desalinate your own water, right? It's just not. It's just a crazy way to think about it.
I don't know how many humans would be capable of that anymore at all. We'd all be screwed if that was the case.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come back to what happened with Infura.
Sure.
And how I want to explain what the alternative. So if somebody's out there, if one of our listeners is currently using MetaMask, which I'm sure most of our listeners do use, and you don't want to give your data to Infura, there's options.
Yes. So MetaMask and Consensus, the company, they're not all bad, right? I'm not saying they're bad.
That's a good point.
I'm just saying they're doing what they're doing, what they have to do. And I don't know the reasoning for everything. What I can tell you with respect to MetaMask is one of the few wallets that has the ability to change the RPC provider. So by default, just like Windows gets preloaded with Explorer and Macs come with Safari, MetaMask comes preloaded with a way to access the MetaMask, the Ethereum blockchain and the Ethereum testnets, and maybe Polygon at this point.
Polygon,
I don't know which one. Out of the box, there's a few that are supported.
Yeah.
What they also allow is for you to change that provider. That's a very Web3 specific thing. That's like going to Google and saying, I want to use google.com, but give me the data from Lycos. That's not even a thing anymore. Sorry, you got me in the 90s, Alta Vista, Hotbot, whatever search engine. What is another search engine that exists now?
DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo, right. I should know that. Or the Brave search engine, right? It's like, I'm going to Google's front, google.com, but give me the data from Brave. Like, that will never happen. Google will never do that.
No.
However, in Consensus, they're like, we're going to follow the Web3 ethos. We will not only build you the front end piece, we will also give you the access layer for free. But if you want to use a different one, because why not? You can use any other RPC provider or blockchain access provider. And Pocket Network happens to be one of these providers that we vendor endpoints to 30, 40, 50 different blockchains, many of them which are EVMs, being things that and MetaMask is built to work with Ethereum virtual machines or Ethereum in general. So we support many of those. I think almost all of them at this point that are public or that are somewhat have some scale. And that's kind of how Pocket, that's what you can do. You can decentralize your C layer by using Pocket, which is decentralized by default.
And let's be clear, you sent me and I'll include this in the show notes. You sent me a 60-second video of how you can do this on MetaMask. That is how simple this is. This is not technical, complex at all. It is 60 seconds. You enter fill out, I think it was like 3 or 4 fields, and you're done. And so what happens then? Let's say I choose Pocket Network as my RPC. What are you guys collecting? What does that mean?
Starbucks example, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess this is what I'm going to have to stick with. Let's say Infura is Starbucks, right? And let's say Pocket Network is Seattle's Best, whatever you want to choose, whatever coffee net chain you want to choose, or Tim Hortons or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I'm Canadian, so
I figured. So I was trying to remember what was up.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, right? Whatever RPC provider you want to go to. So rather than go to Starbucks and go, you say you want to, buy a coffee, you want to buy something through with a transaction. You say you want to go to Dunkin' Donuts, and when you buy a transaction, we teleport your transaction to another node, so another Dunkin' Donuts somewhere else, right? Our Dunkin' Donuts, this Dunkin' Donuts franchise, Pocket Donuts, whatever you want to call it, it essentially gets everything from other nodes that are not in the same house, not owned by the same company. So
it's the gateway. It's going through.
It's the gateway. We're a API gateway. Yeah, it's a different gateway. It's a different.
Rather than going through Infura, it's going through Pocket Network, but it's still the same end.
Exactly right. So a random example that came to mind. This is a much better. Jerusalem has 7, 8. Right? Yeah, you're like, Jerusalem has like 7 gates into the city or 8 gates. Right? You're just going through a different gate. You're still going into Jerusalem at the end of the day. Right.
Right.
Like, it's just like. So that type of thing, right? You can go into a city. You can go through the highway from the north side or the south side. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's the
you're
same
still going
way.
to the city.
You're still getting to Ethereum,
right?
Or you're still getting.
This is a great example. So with the highway example, one highway might charge you a toll, and one highway, as part of charging a toll, they might collect your license plate your license plate number, right? Because that's how they charge you the toll. Whereas another highway doesn't collect anything, so you just drive straight in, right? So Okay.
Right. And so there's there's a toll road, which would be Infura in this case, that charges you a toll by taking your data. And then there's our highway, which is a public good. Because we at present there's nothing that we're doing to affect your access layer.
So obvious next question then. I'm trying to think how best to ask this. Why did Infura do this, and why are you not doing this? That's the difference, right?
I don't know what they're doing with this data. I don't know if they said they're not doing anything nefarious with it. You can only take people at their word. And the Infura are our friends. I cannot tell you what they're doing because I don't know, and I don't want to speculate because I don't think that's not appropriate here. What I can tell you is that we don't do it. So here's what we do. And I talked to our engineers right before our call to make sure I'm very, very specific. So basically, when an API request comes in, our gateways are stored are launched through Amazon, AWS. So we have 20 gateways, I think, or maybe 24 gateways in the world. We're almost everywhere AWS allows us to be right now. So we effectively, you go to our gateway and then we route your request, or your request goes to the gateway that is closest to where you're coming from. So your IP address is used. But rather than store your IP address for anything, we just eject it. Like AWS just ejects it. We don't do anything with that data. We don't log it or anything. We just route your request. What we do store is a node that interacted with a request, the region of the world that the request came from, because we're going to try to debug any issues that may pop up. So if we see something like, hey, things out of Singapore, the nodes in Singapore are slow, or the requests are going down for some reason, we want to know what's going on, but we won't know that a specific IP hit it. We won't know anything specific about where the person is coming, what a person is coming from or doing, and we're not going to be able to get enough data from the data that we do store, which I think we wrote in a blog post, to figure out who this person is. We cannot target you specifically, right? Okay. Yeah. So specifically, so just for being very clear, what we do store is we store the AWS region. The AWS region or gateway where request came from, which blockchain the request was trying to access. Because again, we support 40 or 50 blockchains. Which node processed the blockchain request, and what the result of the request was. It successful or did it fail, and why did it fail if it failed?
Right.
And what was it trying to do? So basically, everything that a person was trying to do without actually knowing who that person was is what we start. And we only do that so we can debug the network.
So you can debug. So you're yeah. And so if I switch to Pocket Network on my MetaMask, I get it doesn't cost me anything. I get the exact same results. I get arguably I might get actually enhanced security because I'm now using a decentralized node network. And in the future, as you said, it's in 2023 when you launch this next version where the next you're decentralizing the whole thing, right? I'm not saying the language right because I'm not.
No. You're saying it right. And the other thing that you didn't say is we actually get better service. So there's a couple websites that do compare RPC traffic. So rpcmeter.io is one website that was built that shows how we compare to our three biggest competitors: Anchor, Alchemy, and Infura. And for the most part, all three of the services that are not Infura, so Alchemy, Anchor, and Pocket, are better than Infura in every situation. So not only so, even if if you look at it, like I just clicked. If you go to rpcmeter.io, so I'll just here, and you click on Ethereum, you type in Miami, you hit like London, Paris, Singapore, Seoul, whatever the regions that this website tests against, you'll see that like in Miami we're neck and neck. But if you look anywhere else, we are like in Singapore, we're the fastest. In Seoul, we're not the fastest, but we're like a factor of 8 faster than Infura. So whatever you're going to do by switching to us, not only do you get speed, but you get decentralization and privacy. Right. And that's our value proposition. That's a value.
And that's the value. That's the value prop. And okay. And so that makes tons of sense. I believe that our listeners should highly consider making this switch, because if you don't, then any transaction that you make using your MetaMask wallet moving forward, they are now collecting your data. So be aware of that and do your own research, make your own decisions. This is not financial advice, or maybe this is like personal safety advice or wallet hygiene advice.
This is an opinion. This is an opinion for which I condone you for, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. You concur. I appreciate that.
Concur. Yeah.
So we don't know why Infura did this. Can we just break down the reasons? Like, what are the potential reasons why they might have done this? So compliance and regulation, perhaps. Perhaps. Not that they necessarily know the compliance or regulation yet, but that they're anticipating something coming down the line, right?
Sure. They might know something we don't about laws or things, right? The Tornado Cash thing made things really complicated for everyone involved in this space. So there might be compliance, regulation. They might want to sell data in the future, but not now. But they're not saying they're doing that. They might need to, might have some governments might be asking for something specific as a follow on to another issue, but they're not mentioning it. I don't know if they mentioned specifically that this is a reason, or maybe it's just to cover their butts, right? I mean, that's a complete, like I said, our lawyers are doing the same thing. They want us to cover our butts. And we are pushing back right now saying this is what we do and this is what we don't do. And this is what our engineers approve, because we are trying to follow the crypto blockchain Web3 thesis as best as possible, to be as transparent as possible. All of our work is in the open. You can see what our gateway does. It's all the code is there. If you can read the code, it's in there. Do I expect everyone to read the code? No, not at all. No. Just like I don't expect everyone to set up their own nodes. But it's there and in the open because we don't have anything to hide in that regard.
Right.
Like you know, right. And what I said, before we released our blog post, I had our engineers, and we have engineers all over the world, so not everyone's Thanksgiving was affected. But we had them, lucky them. But some of them had, some of them were affected, and everyone understands why we're here and what we're doing. They all went and they looked through all the data that we have, and they confirmed, like, hey, we are not collecting things that we shouldn't be collecting.
Right. It was almost like, so I guess what happened was it forced everybody to pause and say, oh my gosh, where do we fall on this? And it leads everybody to, I mean, these are the things that need to happen in Web3. And another example of this is Uniswap recently. It was about 2 weeks ago, I believe, when they announced that they will be collecting some off-chain data, such as, I think they said user's device type or browser. I can't remember exactly what else they said, but they said their main objective was improving user experience. Do you remember or have any insight?
It's something, that's what I read. That's how I read it, right? When I read this, preparing for this interview, and I remember seeing it. I'm like, okay, I don't see anything nefarious in there. As someone who's developed mobile apps for a long time and browser websites for a while, you just need to know where your users are coming from and how to properly style your product. If you've ever built a website, you know that there are certain browsers like Internet Explorer 6, which were the bane of all web developers because CSS didn't work the right way. And then there were certain versions of Firefox that didn't work, and Chrome and what have you. And they want to know, are probably more people using them on web or mobile? Are they using it in landscape or portrait mode? Are they using it on mobile Safari or mobile Chrome, or are they using mobile Brave browser, which is a version of Chrome? What time of day? How are they using it? Like, maybe to adapt the experience. I don't know because I don't work there, but I know as someone who's been a UX or UI engineer for a long time, that the more data you have to analyze how a user uses a product, the better the product becomes. Do they plan on reselling the data to other advertisers? I don't know. Can they sell it? Sure. You can build patterns about people and target them.
Yeah.
It's not my specialty. I, again, love Uniswap, but I can even give another alternative how to get around it if you want. You can use the Tor browser, which is built into Brave, and you can go use Uniswap. Or if you're not in the US, you can use the Tor browser and go use 1inch, because 1inch doesn't work in the US. You can do whatever you want. There's ways around it. We live in this magical time where you can do everything and almost everything in a decentralized fashion. You just have to have the gumption and the know-how to do so. And it's now, I think we're in a stage now where all of us who are like orange pilled, red pilled, whatever you want, whatever matrix Bitcoin analogy you want to use, we love this stuff. We're starting to learn how to do it, but by no means is it common sense, right? I can't expect everyone to know how to do this, but the options actually exist, right? If you know where to look, you can figure it out. And they're not like, you're not like building code from scratch and just trying to launch something now. You literally can just push a button in Brave, and now you have a privacy secure Tor browser instance. I'm like, holy cow. Like, I was like, I've never really had to use Tor before, but now I want to, and now I can. So I use it whenever I want. I can now, because why not? It's privacy preserving.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the main question here. I think that comes up for all of us is, as we build Web3, we all need to prioritize the tough conversations, and we need to encourage all the builders and everybody in the space to really be thoughtful about the decisions we make, because we are building infrastructure layer. And yeah, sure, you say that people can do this, and there's this magical time, and anything is possible. But let's be real, 90%, myself included, are not going to do those types of things, right? I'm not a highly technical person in that way. I don't have that interest. Like I also, I think that, but what I think this comes down to is, it's this question of what Infura did and what Uniswap did, and they are different, certainly, in terms of what they are collecting, right? But is this a trend? Is this necessary for industry growth? Because the tough thing is, as you said, you need data for improving the user experience, for improving your product. Data is very helpful. Is there certain data you need and certain data that you don't need? In your case, you have clearly shown that with Pocket Network, you don't need the same data that Infura is currently saying that they need. Right now, we don't necessarily know the why, but I think that we're at this interesting inflection point where these foundational questions come up about the way we are building this infrastructure, as to, when do you prioritize growth and user experience versus when do you prioritize user privacy and user safety and user owning their own data? And so I don't know where you sit on that, or where maybe current status, or where you think we're going in the future.
I wish I had a great answer. I'm going to try to give you an answer that might sound a little bit like word salad. So I apologize ahead of time to all the listeners. There's always going to be data collection. The level of it will differ depending on who's at the helm and what they're trying to do, or what country it's being built in, right? So I have friends who went to Qatar for the World Cup, and they had to install an application on their phone to have everything tracked. I don't believe in that, right? I don't think that's appropriate. You can go to China, and
the government required that.
That's what
And
that's
is
what
it
they told me.
pronounced Qatar or is it Qatar? I don't actually know.
I've heard both, but I've heard that
Yeah,
the lat Qatar is the
is the
proper.
proper way. That's what I
Yeah.
think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
I'll take that. So yeah, they told me that that's what they were told to do. I have no idea. They didn't tell me if it was like under a gun or
Right.
but the point is that data collection is going to happen. Now, the other thing here is what are you going to do with that data, right? So as an example, and I keep saying this because we are three separate entities that we're trying to differentiate. Pocket Network Inc., the US company, we have not been told, to my knowledge, that we must be collecting this information. Maybe Infura was told something because they're bigger and more prevalent in the industry than we are. Maybe that'll come down to us and we'll have to make a decision on what to do. We don't know. We have not been served with any papers saying you must collect and you must facilitate this information back to us. That would be crazy because we're a private entity. Again, I don't want to put like, I don't know. Again, that's the one thing. We also don't need this data. We are not trying to upsell, resell our users. We are just trying to capture traffic and do a public good, right? We're offering a public good. Like our whole value proposition is to underpin as much of Web3 traffic as possible because we want to be a base layer protocol. Our business model effectively is to go after other gateways, first to have them pass their traffic to us. And then when we decentralize our gateway or have the ability to decentralize access into the blockchain network, meaning other people can stand up gateways, they can stand up their own gateways and they can do whatever the hell they want to do at that point. But right now, we're just trying to capture traffic and make sure that our network stays performant and reliable and cheap. And the more, and one of those things, our way our company works is the more traffic we get, the more affordable everything gets. It's a flywheel, right? You have the more RPC traffic we have, the more tokens that are minted, the more tokens that are minted, the more nodes that are staked, the more nodes are staked, the more decentralized we become, the more decentralized that we are, the more people are going to want to use us because we're more privacy preserving, and the flywheel continues. And I'm sure there's pieces in there that I missed, right? And as long as we're super decentralized, we become even more reliable because we get more entry points from different regions in the world. So you could be sending an API request from somewhere in Africa right now, which I don't know if anyone really has any gateways there, but if there ends up being enough traffic coming out of Nigeria or Kenya or the other places or Ethiopia, wherever transactions occur the most, South Africa even, I think there's a South African gateway, there will be more incentives for more gateways to be stood up closer to there, right? So it's a flywheel that continues. It's like Ouroboros, right? It's this snake that eats itself. It just continues to get bigger and better, and network effects just kick in. And right now we've found product market fit and we're just trying to scale. And for that, we don't need any actual data about a user because all we need is the traffic itself, and all the incentives around our protocol will help the network grow. Like I said, word salad to some degree.
Yeah, but I mean, so I think what you're saying is, you don't need that data right now, but you're being honest that stay tuned, right?
I'm not I'm saying it because I don't know, right? I don't want this to come back to haunt me in 6 months and be like, here's this. I don't know. I know right now we have no plans for it. We currently don't do it. We don't need it. Who knows what's going to happen in a year or 2 or 3?
Yeah, totally.
Right. So no one knows with this industry. No one knows with where the governments in the world are going. Some are becoming more extractive on privacy and some are not, right? CBDC is a big argument, like central bank digital currencies, which I'm not going to get into, but that is a huge privacy issue that comes with that, with those.
Completely. Yeah. And we don't unfortunately have time today, but the other topic that I want to get into, not just CBDC, that is very interesting, but the structure of protocol network in terms of the corporation, the DAO, and the foundation. We don't unfortunately have time, so I might have to get you back for another show in the future because that is also an interesting organizational structure that you guys have chosen, the way you're building your ecosystem. And as you said, that structure might allow you long-term to maybe make certain decisions about data collection that might be different than a consensus or another organization that is built with a different structure. So
I can give you an answer in 1 minute, and then you can go from there. So basically, we have a protocol. The protocol is currently being built by the US-based company. In the future, no one should own the protocol. It should have contributors from multiple companies, just like multiple companies contribute to Linux and other free open source software. The DAO votes on changes to the protocol. The foundation executes the will of the DAO, and PNI, or Pocket Network Incorporated, is the company that is built to the first company that stood up that is building things in the ecosystem. We have other companies in our ecosystem now that have been building node running businesses on top of our protocol. The goal is to have more and more companies come in and build, and everyone be founded by the foundation. So the DAO dictates what to do by community vote. The foundation executes it, and Pocket Network Inc. and a bunch of other companies are people in the ecosystem that help implement what needs to be executed. That's the very basic example. You need a whole other episode, but yeah.
But I think it's just to give my quick take on this. I think it is a structure that we are going to see more and more. We did not. I think that a lot of us thought when DAOs first became hot and everyone was, oh, DAOs, and oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. Everyone's going to work for a DAO. I think we thought that like it would be corporation or DAO, but now I think we're realizing that a model that might be the most common model might be corporation with a DAO and a foundation that manages a treasury, and that those three build an ecosystem that works together. I think we're going to see that a lot.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Before we wrap here and get into speed round, we were chatting before the show about what is going on at Pocket Network outside of this, of ruining your Thanksgiving dinner, of this announcement. Give us a little update on what's upcoming at Pocket Network. Where are you guys at? We'd love to hear a little bit more about some exciting things that you guys have got going on.
Yeah. So quite a few things. So we are an entire ecosystem, right? We have app developers that are accessing our network. We're building the protocol itself, and we actually have the decentralized network that we are supporting. So one of the things we are known for is being the first company to onboard new blockchains. So one of the new ones coming out that's has a big name is Sui. I think it's Sui, but it's one of the blockchains that came out from the folks working on Facebook's blockchain. So a couple of the founders left Facebook and they built this, and they have an incentivized testnet, and we are one of two providers of access to the testnet, and then we'll be providing the mainnet when that launches. We've seen from the data that we have, because we see which apps are interacting with us, but not the specifics on the users. We see that a lot of GameFi apps are interacting with us. So DeFi Kingdoms, which is an RPG built on the blockchain, was built on the Harmony blockchain. It built an expansion on the Avalanche blockchain, and it's now moved its original game from Harmony to Clayton. Like, we support all three blockchains, so we support everything with DFK or DeFi Kingdoms. So we actually are launch partners with them, I think, for every single time. Krabata is a game built on Avalanche, so we support them too. Actually, we validate transactions on Avalanche too, because we do so much with the Avalanche ecosystem. And Dark Forest is, I think, a game built on, and I think they're one of the first games, and they use us too. And there's others that use us. So because we provide such reliable service and GameFi transactions are so plentiful, they essentially prove the use case that Pocket is reliable and fast and affordable for us to run our entire games on top of this blockchain. And the last thing is, we've been able to apply for grants from things like Aave and get grants where they send us tens of millions of relays or API requests per day from people using Aave on the various blockchains that Aave is supported on, which I think is like Avalanche, Harmony, Ethereum, etc. Same thing with Evmos. So we are doing a lot. We have a lot of that. We have a whole sales team that goes out and builds these relationships. We have another sales team that builds gateway partnerships now. We're working with a couple of partner gateways, like realizing our vision of gateways are coming to us now and saying, please let me send you our traffic. We don't want to stand up all these nodes. We want to provide access. We'll do the B2C thing where we'll find the customer and do the customer acquisition. You just give us reliable, cheap, affordable traffic.
Middleware. You said it.
I love it. Picks and shovels. That's what it is.
Yeah, totally.
And drugs and alcohol, whatever.
Maybe slightly different. One's a
slightly different,
one's not so much, right?
Yeah.
But you're not wrong. To the user, I mean, they both have similar value.
Yeah. Cool.
Where can people find you online if they want to connect with Pocket Network? Where can they find Pocket Network?
Pocket Network is pokt.network and pokt network on Twitter. We say Poct or Pocket, but it's also POCKET, like Pocket. It's whatever you want to call it, but that's what it is, Pocket Network or Pocket Network. And I'm my first three initials of my name. My name's Arthur, so ART, and then my last name, which will be Sabintsev, which you can find.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, you'll put a link. Thank you. It's a long last name. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm on there all the time, or Discord or Telegram. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, before we wrap here, quick speed round, some fun questions for you. Okay, what's an NFT you'll never sell?
I don't have that many at this point, because I kind of got rid of most of them because I don't have the best radar for them.
Smart.
Yeah. Well, they're also their tax savings incentive, right?
Right.
They're capital losses at this point, which unfortunately. But one I really like is a Divine Anarchy piece that I got. I mean, I have it up for sale, but no one's ever going to buy it for that price. So I guess that's as close as you're going to get. But I currently wear a Renga piece. I like Renga. I got it early.
Okay,
but
cool. Yeah, great project. Yeah, I love their artwork. Favorite person to follow on Twitter / who you learning from?
So like it depends. I'm on a big Bitcoin kick now, if you can believe it. So Saifedean Ammous is his books like Fiat Standard and Bitcoin Standard, phenomenal. Love those. He's brilliant. He's really changed how I think. But crypto Twitter, like Gabriel Shapiro, he's a crypto lawyer, and Ryan Selkis, who owns Masari. And on the NFT space, Decentraland, which is just like this crazy Bored Ape guy, just fun NFT alpha.
Love it. Okay, last question. If you had a billboard that 1 billion people were going to see, what would you write on it?
I think I'd write "The law of abundance is real," something like that. It's just like you wish something into existence, and you should give yourself the ability to receive it and be open to new experiences and stuff.
I really like that. That's one of the best answers to that question that we've had.
Yeah, I think it's something I try to drop in every podcast. I have to thank my wife for this one. It's just a different way of thinking about the world.
Yeah,
like, if you want it, just like wish it and see if it'll happen. And your brain naturally starts doing things, or you do start doing things to get to where you want to be.
That is a great note to end on. Arthur, this has been a blast. Thanks so much for informing us and for educating us all on what's going on in data collection and privacy policy, and teach us about Pocket Network. Very exciting.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.